done flats as well. So I usually try to make up, and it takes, for the 8300, it takes me like 3 or 4 days to get flats. Because of the, if I do sky flats, but if I do using my electroluminescent panel, well, it takes me what, half an hour to take flats.
Do you want to show us real amateurs an example or two of flat corrected versus non-flat corrected?
I can't.
Okay.
Because I don't have a DVI
Okay.
plug for my laptop. Yes, I know negative values can. So, any other questions? Any other topics that you might be interested in? Or is it too early in the morning?
Yeah. I have a question on taking darks with the DSLR, the Canon 5D.
Okay.
I've got a situation that when I apply the darks, they tend to make the image noisier.
When you apply the darks, they tend to make the image noisier.
And
I'm not familiar with that camera.
How many darks are you taking?
I usually take a multiple of whatever the image time is. Like if I'm using 5-minute images, I'll usually use about 15 darks at least.
You take the darks at the same temperature?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I usually run them as soon as I finish taking the image. I just take a set of darks and then keep those in the same folder library, so that I don't have to keep track of when they were taken at what temperature. But I'm usually processing them in CCD stack 2, and the darks look normal. You know, they look normal in every respect. But then when you try and apply them in calibration, they actually make the image noisier.
Really?
Which then trying to figure out why.
I wonder if is your long. I'm not familiar with the camera, but with Nikon we have there's a long exposure noise reduction.
I see that in the menu, but I don't know how to use it.
You got to show
You
them
got
off.
to turn that off. It may be that you are actually already applying the dark internally.
Well, you can tell very easily if you take a 5-minute exposure and it takes 10 minutes, then your auto dark exposure is on.
It's on.
Yeah, it's better to take a series of darks and average them like you're doing, but that option's not typically on by default. So.
Yeah,
I think on the Nikon they are on.
Well, I have a Canon.
Yeah, the Nikon has another kind of problems. It doesn't generate true raw data.
Yeah.
Because the raw data from Nikon they are already being processed by the camera itself. So you can see it. If you look at a dark frame from a Nikon, you see a cluster of pixels.
Yes, yeah.
That's
It's not a true raw.
Because I do.
So
use
just
it all the
Canon
time.
gives you a true raw. You can
And I have
subtract.
a Canon camera
And
too.
then, which kind of software do you use for subtracting the dark frames?
CC stack 2.
Because you have to see if there is some some pedestal involved in the operation. Because some CCD uses a pedestal of 100 ADU. But in your camera, maybe there is not such a pedestal. But if CCD stacks takes in account the 100 ADU, you get noise because
Right.
you have to get rid of
That's
the
another
100
good
ADUs.
point, because on my cameras, on some of them, depending on which one, I actually have to put in about 2,000 or 3,000 additional
Yeah, you can do it
pedestals.
with by math, no problem.
Yeah.
You can rise up all the pixels.
Yeah, but that's what I do. I rise them up so that when I subtract, no pixel has a negative value, because some of these programs don't handle negative values.
Yes.
Well, I've noticed that too. As I stroll through some of the data and look at some of the pixels, they have large negative numbers, 200-300
Okay.
negative.
Yeah, you want to, yeah, that's what you want to avoid. So what you want to do is you want to add in your processing, when you process it, there should be a place where you can add.
Right, an ADU adjustment.
Basically it's just an offset. You're basically taking all your data and you're adding a fixed number to it. That fixed number is what we call a pedestal.
But then it's better to have a wide, at least 32 bits, because
Yes.
if you have 16 bit, you can cap the
right.
higher part of the histogram.
Right.
So a better way is to work with floating points data because you are always between 0 and 1, so no
And
problem.
that's, I don't know if CCD Stack does that. I think it works with 32-bit
Yeah,
integer.
it does.
I use Maxim because Maxim works in floating point, and I use PixInsight because it works in 64-bit floating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And CCD is also a bit.
You begin
Okay,
to
they
notice
use
that
Yeah.
the much more graininess
I lost it a little
in the
bit
dark
speed.
areas when you subtract the
Float
dark
down.
frames.
I did an experiment once. Okay, he went. 64 is better.
But does that help you out, maybe?
Yeah, I'll try that. I'll rerun the darks.
Okay, I'm guilty. And it's work. Hey Ralph, how are you? I'm in the middle of a talk, giving a talk.
Should we start broadcasting this?
Spill some company secrets.
Okay, 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 thanks, bye. They want to change columns on a building. It's the architect calling me.
Better to do it before they put them in.
Well, no, they're already in, they want to change it.
Oh,
So it's always a matter of row and columns.
Right, yes, exactly. Okay, any other questions, or any,
Yeah, one more thing. I just wanted to find out what you think about, the school of thought of, is it better to take darks that are time matched to your lights? Or is it better just to, once or twice a season, take a set of really long darks, like 30 or 60-minute darks,
if you
and
have,
take biases with them, and just scale those? Does one way actually work better than the other?
okay, yes and no, and it depends what you're doing. If you're using a DSLR or a camera that has non-regulated cooling, you must take darks at the same time as you took your lights.
Right.
So they're very close to the same temperature. You
Okay.
must, you have to.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
now
the
this,
ST
now this,
4000 camera, is it temperature regulated?
which one?
ST 4000?
Yes, that's temperature regulated, as long as you keep the same temperature. For example, I'm running at minus 25°C. I know I can run cooler, but I run minus 25°C because my darks are they're about a year old. Okay, I need to take new darks, but basically the second half of the answer is I do it once a year.
You just run a real long batch of what, half an hour or an hour for each one?
No,
Reach
I
out.
don't use bias. Bias, you throw out of water, kick it in the trash. The reason being is because I'm using RBI mitigation on my camera, and you cannot use bias correction with RBI mitigation. So you have to have darks that are the same time as your lights. Okay. But if you don't use RBI, like for example, the KAI sensors don't need RBI mitigation. You could use bias in one set of flats at one set of time, and you can use dark scaling, which generally works for the scientific community. But if you're in the process of making nice pictures, there's some indifferences, like showing you over here. Well, camera's not exactly linear, but it's close to linear, right? I mean, you're starting below the 0.2 line over here, and look how it goes up. It's not exactly linear. So using the bias assumes that your dark signal noise and everything is linear. Well, the truth of the matter, it's not quite linear on those cameras.
Okay, professional do biases. They don't do darks because they cool down their camera so low that they don't produce any electrons
Yeah,
of
they
dark noise. So they just take into account the electronic noise. So they
Yeah,
get the
for-
bias.
For the observatory I'm designing for FIU in Miami, the guy does work on Blazar, so Dr. Webb, and they use only 1 minute darks, and then they use biases and they scale for whatever they're doing, and that's really it. But they're not interested in pretty pictures; they're interested in
Indeed.
looking down that black hole, that Blazar. That's what they're looking for.
Is this a good place to ask about color calibration?
Sure.
On the same thing, I don't have any problems with ST 4000 camera. It works like gold. But I use wide field, I use a Canon 5D, and I just get headaches with this camera. One of the issues I have with it is color calibration is terrible. And yesterday I tried recalibrating the camera using a gray flat field image, an actual image picture, and put it out in the sunlight and took a picture of it. And I set it at about, the exposure at about half well. And use that image in the camera to calibrate the camera. And when I then looked at the picture and analyzed it, I just opened up the camera, opened up Maxim. I had to make one small adjustment, and I was able to get all three RGB to get the exact same number. You know, across the field, just you can window a number, take an average, just move the mouse around, it was flat. So I was getting 111 on RGB anywhere I moved in the screen, which was really, really good. Then I went to I used it last night, and I took images on a G2B star, and then I would window the star in the image. I make sure I didn't saturate the star, so I found I could take like a 3-second image, and the maximum ADU was probably about 40,000. And I would then window that, put a little box around that to get an average in maximum. And the RGB values are way off. It's always left red with 1, but green would end up being like 1.4.
You actually might want to try defocusing.
Yep.
Okay, so that you spread the energy of the light on several pixels and not concentrate it on just 2 or 3 pixels, and that's going to throw off your values. What you want to do is you want to increase. You make a donut of light on a whole, maybe 20 pixels, so you get a better weighted average.
Yeah, but the best way is not to take the average, but you get the total flux of photons hitting the camera. You can do this also in MaxMDL. It gives you an information about the flux of photons. So it depends also on your camera, so it depends the gain of the camera and whatever. But you can get the total flux of photons that hit that area. You need to know this data for calibrating white. So you read the total flux for the red, green, and blue, and then you make your adjustment putting the green in the center. So you're stating green is 1, and so you know the difference between the red and the blue efficiency of your system. So you're able to balance the white point. But color balance, it's always an issue because you have to balance also the black point, which is really, we can be really challenging to balance the black point in image.
What I try to do mostly on RGB images is, I use PixInsight, and I put the RGB, once I calibrate and do everything in Maxim, I take it, I go into PixInsight, and what I do is I match up the histograms, the RGB histograms on top of each other, and usually, I don't do the G2B thing. It gives me white stars, red stars, blue stars, it gives me the whole gamut, basically, just by matching the histograms. It usually works for me.
Yeah, it is good on wide range emitting subject, but
not on emission.
Yeah, because if you do this on emission, you get wrong. That's the point. If you shoot a galaxy, you can do even an auto color because the spectra is nearly all present just together. But when you get something just like a nebula or an emitting nebula, you can do this.
Right.
That's the point. But even G2B stars, it's something, I don't know, it's just like I'm saying, we here are not looking at colors that emits light. Normally we do the reverse. So we see the color of thing that reflects light. But we are taking images of subject that emits light. So we use a special color space, which is the RGB additive, which is made of for emitting subjects, right? And then the eye always compensate for the white point or stuff, but is just if we want to look the subject that emits light as if they were illuminated by our sun. That's the point. White point balance using G2V star is just like looking at those subjects if they were pictures illuminated by our sun. It's just a convention. It's not the true white point because white point doesn't exist. That's the point you have to understand when we try to balance the pictures.
The response that I get on the camera after I color balance it, like when I was trying to take those G2V images, you know, I started at 10 seconds and they were saturated, so I had to get down to 3 seconds before the image was usable. But when you look at the image, I mean, it's a color image, but the screen is completely speckled with red and green, or red and blue. There's no green that shows up.
It sounds like to me that in your processing, the negative values are causing you issues.
Right, this is just if you open up the, take the image and then look at it, if you look at the image in CCE stack, it's already a color image, so you don't have to convert it. But if you just look at the image, it comes right off the camera. It's really noisy. It has a lot of, it's basically like just speckled red and green.
Red and green,
And I don't get that kind of response at all from like an SBIG 4000 chip. I take a picture of that, just look at one frame with a short time. It doesn't do that. Only this DSLR camera is doing it, and I'm trying to figure out where all that noise is.
You have the Bayer matrix. You have a Bayer matrix, so you have the pixels are not always collecting lights in the same way, but there are pixels that are collecting green lights, the other blue lights, and the other red lights.
There are actually technically 2 greens, one red and one blue.
That's the point. So you have to de-Bayerize your images and then compose the color together for having the chance to correct this.
The built-in debayering routines in the Canon are really intended for daylight photography. There are better debayering routines that other applications support. It's better to shoot in RAW, get the RAW, and then let the software. This is why I like Nebulosity, and I know Nebulosity isn't the only solution for this, but it has better debayering routines in it than what you get off the Canon. For a deep sky subject, those debayering routines do not do a very good job. And
I always shoot in the Canon, the CS2 RAW, but a lot of times I'll set the camera for RAW plus JPEG just so I can take quick looks at the picture without having to convert it. But when I convert the picture, I still get a lot of that noise. And what you're saying is true, is that the noise that's created from the camera's version of the image is noisier than if I convert it myself.
And it's better to subtract the darks before you debayer too. Don't convert to color and then do color darks and subtract the color darks. Shoot the darks in RAW, and you get that. If you look at it real close, you can see the Bayer matrix. You get these big grid patterns when you zoom in on the image. But you want to shoot your darks like that as well. Subtract the darks from those, and then debayer that, and that pushes it up another notch of quality as well.
That's another question I have: is when you subtract darks, do you if you're shooting the darks in RAW, do you have to debayer the darks before you apply?
No, that's where you can add a lot of extra noise too.
So you apply them.
You apply the darks before you debayer. The darks are raw, the images are raw. You subtract, and Nebulosity uses it all fits. It takes it and puts it in a fits file, which is kind of nice. But the darks are not debayered, the raws are not debayered. You subtract the darks, and you do your flat processing there too. And only then do you apply the color. And then only then do you stack. I had a friend of mine who stacked them all and then debayered them, and we couldn't figure out why the color. It's like, no.
I'm going to give another suggestion. There's a free program called Deep Sky Stack.
That's what I use.
And it's a fantastic program. It works great. And I actually use it when I use my Nikon D700 to take images. So you can try that one out. deep sky.
DSS, it does it all in the correct sequence.
Yeah,
It's a really nice program.
Yeah,
And it
it's
uses
easy.
all the, if you have a multi-core processor
Maybe less
computer,
than
it uses all the cores.
Really?
So if you got 12 cores, I think you said you put 2 core,
Yeah.
you got a server and you put 2 processors, right?
Mhm.
So you got what, so you got a Westmer, so you probably got 6 cores per processor and 2 threads, so that's
Yeah.
24 threads. So you can process them real fast with that program, and you can have a huge number of images with that program.
Oh my gosh.
You tell it
I know that
which are the
Deep
darks,
Sky
which are the
Stacker has
flats,
some.
which are the images, and that's the way it goes.
Deep Sky Stacker it's a very nice and easy program.
Yes.
But if you want to do real math, just like Pix Inside
Inside.
do,
Mhm.
it does something you don't know,
Well,
but it does.
Yeah, I do use pixel math a lot because I take my hydrogen alpha, and again, this is one of those things that you learn. Statistically, if you take hydrogen alpha, 33% of that is hydrogen beta. So guess what? You don't have to take a hydrogen beta image. So you take, what I do is, what people do is they try to use hydrogen alpha as your luminance channel. That is
There's
actually
another-
that is the wrong concept.
Yeah.
What you
Yeah,
do is you
that's
take,
what I say, that's
yeah,
the-
you have to take the red, you take your, what I do is I take my red image and my hydrogen image and I add them together. Then I take 33% of my hydrogen alpha and I add it to the blue filter. And then I combine an RGB image and guess what? The color is correct.
Yeah, there are many tricks about it, but
Yeah.
it's a nonsense in concept because you are trying to map the whole luminosity just at one line.
On
so-
one wavelength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, there is a lot of trick you can do.
There's a lot of, exactly. And that's the trick that I use, that I learned. And that
And
is,
then if you want to add in Pix inside, you can subtract from the red, which is also include the continuum red.
red,
You can subtract from the H alpha, so it gives you just the H alpha data without the continuum for
Right.
the, you know.
well,
and-
you need
and
to use,
that's the best
well, you're
way
talking
to-
about using a continuum filter.
No, you don't need it. You can use the red channel in Pix inside
Uh-huh.
and use that red channel for
Well,
subtracting.
I'm gonna have to get with you on that one. So I'll learn a new technique. Yeah, unfortunately, I have Pix Insight and everything in there, and raw some calibrated images that we could actually try some of that stuff. But maybe actually you might have something when you do yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Maybe the color colors.
You think it's color code? Yeah.
okay, anybody else have any questions? No more questions? Okay. So, well then we'll move on to, do you guys want to give your
Sure.
presentation?
Sure.
Or do we want to wait a little bit longer, or how do we want to handle it? Like I said, this is really informal, it's not meant to be formal, so like I said, any questions that anybody has, anything you want to share, you know, you can come up here, or you know, however you want to do it.
Give us 1 minute to stand up.
Yeah, go ahead, take a 1 minute break. Go, do jumping jacks or something. Okay. Well, I'm going to turn the talk over to Richard Wright, Giovanni
Paglioni.
Huh?
Paglioni.
Paglioni.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Giovanni.
Just
Giovanni.
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 Joe.
Hey, Joe.
So, Richard is a representative and some code writer for Software Bisq. And so what are we going to talk about? You're going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the importance of tracking and pointing.
Okay, so
So,
I'll let you go ahead and take over. He is a wizard at OpenGL.
yes,
Yeah.
which
And
really
I'll
like
sit on this where I can see the
I'm not
screen.
going to save.
Richard, can I get you to wear this microphone?
Sure, I can, oh, for the recording, okay. Sure.
Not 8 o'clock, because they're on mute, but
Okay, thanks. I need to wait for everything to go or?
Oh, I could say go ahead and start.
Go, okay, hi. I'm Richard Wright, I work for Software Bisq. and I'm one of you guys. I belong to the Central Florida Astronomical Society up outside Orlando. And, astro imaging workshop, this is what people tend to talk about is image processing. This is what comes out of the camera, and this is what comes out of Photoshop. And, Giovanni is going to talk a good deal about all of that. But, getting from here to here is really a very, very big process. But in order to do that, you have to have good data. So there's no amount of Photoshop, PixInsight, AstroArt, deconvoluted voodoo that will turn this into this. You have to have very good data. Now, I'm an aspiring astrophotographer, and for 10 years, the only thing I ever took pictures of was the moon. And then a few years ago, I've gone to deep space stuff, and Giovanni made a nice comment. I was showing him some pictures of mine the other day, and my friend said the same thing to me. A number of people, they look at my pictures and they go, "You have very good data," which I think is a very nice way to say, well, you got a long way to go, but at least you got the first part of the equation correct. So you got to have good data before you can start to stretch it and do good processing of it. So, where does good data come from? Obviously, if you just spend enough money and you just buy all the equipment and you're good to go, it's not entirely the case. You have to look at the entire imaging system. The camera is obviously a very important part. Your optics are an important part. Focus, pointing and tracking, which is the thing I'm probably most qualified to talk about here today. The weather, of course, we've been fighting the weather. I'm always fighting the weather to get good data. And then, of course, signal and good clean signal and not munging up your dark and whatnot. And, of course, practice, good practice. So, I work for a vendor, and I'm not going to tell you that if you spend a whole bunch of money on our stuff, that this stuff is easy. If you just get the right equipment, it's easy. Anything in life that's worth pursuing and that you take pride in mastering is going to take some practice. But, the good equipment is a must as well. That said, I've seen some people do really amazing work with very low-end equipment, and I've seen some people with very high-end equipment, hundreds of thousands of dollars, that take pictures that make me cringe. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just simply one thing. It would be silly to say that the mount is the single most important part of the image train, which of course it is. So I found a nice quote. Most important element in astrophotography is accurate tracking. So that's what I'm going to talk about, and the tracking is extremely important for what you're doing. So and look, it's not even our product. I'm being very, sharing the load. This is, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, and I could be wrong. An equatorial mount is the best type of mount for doing astro imaging. It's very easy to set up, get this pole here aligned with the North Pole, and it tracks as the Earth rotates, and you would think that would be, all there is to it. But this really is, I think, the best way. Now, if you have an alt-as mount, let's see, there's another manufacturer. Aren't I just so bipartisan? If you have an alt-as mount, you can do the wedge thing so that you get this, along the polar axis, or a field rotator. A lot of the big professional observatories, they use an alt-as mount because their telescope weighs 50 tons, and they use a field rotator. And I've seen a lot of amateurs do that, and there's some good equipment, and a lot of people are getting very good results.
Are there amateur field rotators?
Yes. Optec makes one. Yeah, Optec, O-P-T-E-C. Yeah, Optec. Yeah, the Dickermans, they're nice people. Okay, so, what are the issues with tracking? Basically, this is what we don't want. We don't want stars that look like dashes. So how do we get rid of the stars that look like dashes? And there are many things that the mount can help mitigate with. Polar alignment is, of course, very important. And a good mount, whether it's our mount or someone else's mount, a good mount will be easy to polar align, whether it has a polar alignment scope or it has some software routines that work with the camera and the telescope to help you achieve a polar alignment in a very quick manner. Now, as an amateur myself, I'm a portable imager. I don't have an observatory in my backyard or in Arizona. So when I go camping, I set up and I've got my routine. I'm doing my alignment during, actually, to some degree, you can do an alignment during the day using the sun and Jupiter and whatever happens to be up. But by the end, I'm totally aligned by the time twilight's over with. And so it's very important to me that